Welcome to part 4 of this Belly Dance for Beginners course with me, Lindsay Marie Silver, here at Sahara Studio in Scotland. In this class, we're going to enjoy exploring the world of camels. What is a camel? You might have heard of it in belly dance, you might not have, but let me tell you, it is fabulous. This feel-good movement not only looks good for your dance repertoire, but also it has huge benefits for all of the muscles of the body, your spine. It's even incredibly good for your digestive system and even pain relief. Wow, who doesn't want to learn that? All right, if you want to come with me on this journey, let's jump in. So to begin with, in this fabulous deep dive into camels, let's start off with that basic stance that you have. Take your feet about hip width apart, spread out through toes, relax and release through your feet and ankles, spread the relaxation up, bend your knees, tuck the hips in neutral. We're going to sweep relaxation up through the back, through waist into belly, through each of your organs, deep relaxation and beginning to bring that quality breathing technique that we have, tuning in to sacred life force energy space and into heart space. Feel the connection between both of those as you breathe. Expand the belly with the breath, the chest, collarbones rise. Feel that sensation of fullness in your body. And this is quite an important one in terms of really feeling and expanding into this particular movement. Let's release the collarbones, chest returns, and the belly returns. And so there's no more breathing out, so there's no more air left. Whoa. That feeling of emptiness. And that gives us more space to take in good quality breath, expand the belly, expand the chest, collarbones rise. Feel that sensation of fullness in your whole being. Allow all of the nutrients of oxygen to be channeled to each of your individual cells and muscles in preparation for moving them, breathing all the way out. So we're going to utilize that breath in this movement pattern. And let me talk you through the actual movement pattern itself, first of all. So I want you to think about the way that a camel moves, or the way that you might move if you're riding a camel, if you've ever experienced that. Or, for me, something that feels even closer to this kind of movement, I want you to think about the way that a snake moves, and the way that it slithers across the desert. This smooth, serpentine, fluid movement. And we're going to channel that through our body, channeling that energy, that flow of energy. And I want you to think about visualizing it starting from low section of rib cage downwards. And the upper half, we're actually going to use that anchoring technique. If you're not sure of that, you can check that out on the playlist. There's lessons focusing in on isolating and anchoring. So in here, what we're first going to do is take one of those good deep quality breaths. And then we're going to allow the ribcage to rise upwards and outwards on the diagonal. And then sure 2 in there, yes. Now I'm going to show you this in a more extravagant, extended version. But just knowing that this movement, the camel itself, can be danced in a very internalized way where it's almost invisible to anybody looking from the outside, but you absolutely feel it internally. So we're going to extensively expand, and then we're going to use that to allow us to come down through the spine, roll the movement 1 vertebrae, 2 vertebrae, and so on down the spine. Same time as that, beginning to contract in with upper abs. Feel that? Ooh. Then we're going to roll the movement down the spine, come to mid-abs, pull in with mid-abs, release upper abs. It's subtle, but it is absolutely there. Takes a lot of practice, this one. Then we're going to roll that movement further down towards low spine. Engage through low abs and release mid. Then, using pelvic floor muscles, engage through there and release low abs. And what you'll notice is that your spine and your hips have come all the way from this movement up here. You've rolled the movement all the way down the spine. Your hips naturally tilt. They come in this forwards motion like this, and then they come back into neutral. Be careful not to hyperextend through your back in the low section of this movement pattern. If you do that, you might feel a little bit muscular tension in the coming days, and we don't want that. We want to keep the hips in neutral, nice long lean muscles of low back. So you've come upwards here, roll the movement down the spine, all the way down, allowing the hips just to naturally follow in that motion as they come forwards like this with this tilt, and they come back into neutral. The other thing that you'll notice happening there is this bend of the knee. So we begin in our basic stance, so we have this bend of the knee already. Make sure that your knees stay soft, they stay fluid in their ability to expand and contract the angle in at the knee joint. And so from there, when you come to rolling this movement down, the bend of the knee is heightened, and then it returns back to a more neutral positioning. Okay, so that's what's happening with the spine and the hips and the knees. And let's take a little bit more of a focus on what's happening with the muscles in the front of the body. What tends to happen is people usually have more strength in the back of their body, just the way that we use our bodies in everyday movement nowadays. You know, we go to sleep like this, we sit and have breakfast like this, we make our way to work like this, we come home like this. The whole day is in this motion here. And oftentimes, we're not really using our abs as much as what we should be or could be. So let's readdress that balance within the muscles. Another benefit to this movement, of course, we're readdressing balance, so you're minimizing the risk of injury. And if you do this movement properly, you'll find it very toning. So we're here. Let me take this diagonal angle. In fact, I'm going to use this diagonal angle so that you can see the back of my body, but you can also use the mirror and see from the front here as well. So in that basic stance we have, you could bring your hands out to the side if that feels helpful, or you could bring them onto your body, place them perhaps in an area that feels like, oh, I'm getting the top part of this movement, but I'm finding there's a certain point of this movement that is tricky for me. If you can identify that and place your hands there, you might find it easier just to guide your body into the movement. So let's try again, focusing in on the muscles on the front of the body. Take a deep breath in, really fuel the movement with that breath. And don't be afraid to really expand into this movement. I think one of the residues of, certainly in the Western world, and particularly here in Britain, we have this residual effect of the Victorian era, when women were corseted and everything was strapped down so that it couldn't move. And we're used to kind of sucking everything in and going about our day like that. And then when it comes to actually feeling that womanliness of your own flesh, it can be a bit strange to get used to at first. So what I want you to do is just don't be afraid to really expand into that. It's beautiful. Enjoy that sensation of expansion and the abundance within your own body. So taking that deep breath in, we're going to expand and come upwards on diagonal with the rib cage. Imagine a ribbon attached to the low section of rib cage coming up and out on diagonal. And then from here, we're going to roll the movement down through the spine. Yep. You're going to engage through upper abs, mid abs. And when you contract mid abs, release low. Upper. So you're contracting mid and release upper. Yep. and then contract through low and release mid. And then contract pelvic floor muscles and release low. Yeah, let's try again. Lift up, roll the movement down the spine, simultaneously pulling in with upper abs. Roll it down the spine, come to mid abs, release upper. Rolling down the spine, come to low abs, release mid. And pelvic floor, release low. Did you get that? It's really, really tricky at first. If you're not used to using the muscles of your abdomen, oftentimes when I say, okay, use upper, and people say, God, I can barely contract my abs, let alone individual abs. But trust me, if you think about it, eventually the body is going to follow, because your brain and your body are part of the same system. It can't help but to actually flow over time. And this particular movement can take people years to master. So if it's one that you're finding a little bit trickier than some others, no problem. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the journey. Because one day you're going to arrive at that place of, oh, I can do this easily, fluidly. And you'll think, no, I wish I was back there, experimenting and finding my aha moment. And that might happen. There might be a moment where suddenly you think, I'm getting it. This is it. I'm doing it. Wow. Check me. Look at me go. And then all of a sudden you think, oh, I've lost it. And if there's a moment when you lose it, just come back to that basic stance and start the process again. If there is that aha moment, usually it means you've entered from the place of really cognitively thinking about what you're trying to do with the body, and you've allowed yourself just to sink into the feeling that it brings. You've moved from thinking into feeling. And from that space of not overthinking it, of just letting it flow, that's often when the magic happens. So let's try this a little bit faster if you're ready and if you want to. Otherwise, you can practice this a little bit slower, maybe take it back to the beginning and start through. But if you feel ready, let's try a little bit faster. So take a deep breath in. Expand through rib cage, roll down through spine, use upper abs, mid abs, low pelvic floor. Again, lift up, roll down, knees bend, hips tilt. 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 Bit faster. Lift up, roll down, lift up, roll down, lift up, roll down, lift up, roll down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And you can start to really play around with that movement once you feel comfortable with that movement pattern. You can start to really focus in at the belly, or you could focus in at the hips, or you could focus in at the rib cage. Right in at the torso there. Things to look out for, like we said, make sure that you don't overextend, hyperextend through the spine. And that is quite common. It becomes a different kind of a movement. It's less refined. And it's going to hurt in your low back in the coming days. The other thing to look out for is the bobbing of your height. So you could end up in here like this, which is still a movement. That's still a belly dance movement. And depending on the music and how you want to feel, that could be really delicious. But perhaps you want to make the movement more refined. So your audience says, Wow, how are you doing that? Next thing you could think about is how you want to frame the movement. So you could use some beautiful hands and arms. You could bring the hands up high. Wow, you could think about maybe traveling with that movement. So you could do roll the movement down, roll the movement down. You could bring it in here and travel with it like this. We take it out to the side. Camel, together, camel, together, camel, together, camel, together. You could bring a difference of height. So you could do one camel here and one camel down low. One up on toes and one down low. You can make it super fast and small right in here. Play around with the movement. Find what feels nice to you. There are other movements that could be mistaken for being a camel. There are things like, let's look at the reverse camel, or as it's affectionately known in some circles, the vomiting camel. Personally, I love this reverse camel and the way it feels. You'll see this more in Turkish or Lebanese style belly dance, and it uses a similar movement pattern, but actually it's driven by completely different muscles. We'll go into this in more depth in a future lesson, but let me just show you what that one looks like. It's right in here. And it starts off with the knees and travels, if you notice, upwards through the body. But if you see this movement performed in dance, it can look similar at times because there can be, sometimes it can be danced with no end to the movement. So one rotation just turns into another. So you're repeating that same movement and it starts to, you know, like if you see a car wheel and it goes at a certain speed and it almost looks like it's going backwards. That kind of illusion. So that is the reverse camel. We'll look at that in future. Another one that could be confused as being a camel is a flutter of the belly, a belly flutter. That uses a particular breathing technique, utilizing the diaphragm. And again, we'll look at that in future as well. So this has been a deep dive into the camel. There still is a lot more I could share with you about the camel. It is a fantastical movement. I hope you've experienced some of the beauty of it. I hope you've enjoyed the sensation within your body. If you're somebody who cycles with the moon at the moment in menstruation, have a little shot perhaps of doing a few camels around that flowing time of the moon and just see how that feels. I'm pretty sure, well, for me actually, it's been nothing short of life-changing. That seems like a big claim, but trust me, it can do a lot for you. All right, so let's give that a few shots around here. Camel. You could take it on diagonal. Ooh. Isn't that nice? Doesn't that feel nice? Wow. Well done. Thank you so much for joining me in this class. I look forward to sharing more with you in the future. I love you. Goodbye.